Hi, everyone. Today I'm joined by Ian Shaffer, a senior product specialist at Shimadzu Scientific Instruments, a leading analytical solution provider. Hi, Ian. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks for having me back.
It's great to have you again. This is application number 3, so super exciting. This is a really cool application that you wanted to talk to us about today. It's transformer oil gas analysis. And I'm somewhat familiar about this, but do you want to describe to our viewers here what exactly this is, what this means, and why it's so important?
So for those of our viewers that don't necessarily know much about transformers, basically are transformers that are actually being used by the power companies and everyone. The transformer is submerged in insulating oil. So this will do essentially 2 different things. First, it's going to keep the coils cool to help them work more efficiently, but it also keeps them from heating up and basically burning out. Now, with that, when you do have various faults that happen with the transformer, say it's arcing or you have basically breakdown of the paper that's kind of in between there, you're going to get a bunch of different products that actually make its way into the oil in the form of various dissolved gases. And so that's more or less what this analyzer is trying to do, is address how to analyze those dissolved gases within this oil. So the reason that's important is transformers, they're very large, they're very expensive. If you can spend basically a fraction of the money keeping an eye on the health of the transformer, you'll be able to pull it offline before you might have something like an explosion, which can actually cause billions of dollars worth of damage, millions of dollars worth of basically replacement, on top of just the environmental impact that occurs when something like this happens. So this type of analysis is very important. And the other thing is there's a lot of transformers, so throughput is also key to this application.
Interesting. So you're saying there's just thousands of these transformers all around the world, and they've got this oil in them, and they're degrading, and you can measure the gases that are coming out to determine if they're going to fail and explode ultimately?
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay, so what kind of gases are you looking at to detect this?
So typically you're trying to avoid an explosion. So one of the major gas types that you're looking for is anything that might ignite. So typically you're looking at things like hydrogen, you're looking at your light hydrocarbons, you're looking at some secondary indicators like carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, all which tell you slightly different aspects of the health of the transformer itself.
Interesting. Okay, and so you have this analyzer system then that can detect all of these gases in the oil and tell people when it's failing. What's unique about this product, this detector that you guys have, this instrument?
Actually, I can just show you the diagram of this, and that might help explain this a little bit more. Okay, so this is our application note on basically dissolved gases in transformer oils. And so this is what's known as D3612 method C. And so method C is the newest iteration of this method, which is actually employing a headspace autosampler. And so the nice part about this, just to kind of go back just a little bit, the original method was using mercury displacement as your degassing, absolute nightmare of analysis. You might be able to get a couple samples done over the course of a day. Then comes in the B method. That actually is a direct oil injection method where you're relying on the oil to actually be degassed, which works great, except when you find out that basically with TOGAS method B, you're kind of locked into a single oil type. And transformers now are using all kinds of new oil types for various safety profiles and environmental reasons why you might have these different types of oil. TOGAS method C, using the headspace autosampler, is really able to overcome those issues foaming when you mix the 2 oils, because all we're doing is pressurizing the vial with the oil and only sampling the gas that comes out the top. And so our particular design for this, the key is kind of bring this method more into the future with the current technologies, and also make sure that we've got fast throughput, simplicity so that the user can actually, do a lot of the maintenance themselves, and just overall trying to bring the best products we can to market. And so this is our design. We have our headspace autosampler here in the front. Column 1 is going to be a Q-bond column. So this is a plot column or porous layer open tubular column, which is able to separate your permanent gases, so your hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, methane, CO, away from carbon dioxide and your light hydrocarbons. So that will be all of your C2s, C3s, and out to C4 with this method. Basically, by doing that, we can send our permanent gas analysis toward the TCD, which is a universal detector, so we can see all of our permanent gases, which has a molecular sieve column, pretty much the best separation you can get for permanent gases. So we can get hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen all speciated away from each other. And then on the other side, we have basically our CO2 and our hydrocarbons all going to this methanizer so that we can actually be able to see it. Kind of the next step of that is, what about methane and CO if we're sending this to the mole sieve? We tie that back into the TCD and send it through T so that it can also go through the methanizer. And using some creative strategies, we were able to time out the two columns such that methane and CO elute right in between the C2 and C3 components. So we don't really have any loss in time of peak trapping or any of the challenges and wear and tear on the columns that way.
That is really cool. I don't think I've ever seen that T method at the end before. So that's a smart idea to both simplify and get the speed that you want. And so just so I understand, so you got these two columns. One does kind of like a split of your permanent gases and your other stuff, and then you go through this valve, and so you can kind of hard cut, send just the permanent gases to that second mole sieve, which is a zeolite, and get that separation, and then everything recombines to the FID.
Correct.
Ah, that's cool. Yeah,
Yep.
and so I have to admit, I've been to a lot of TOGA labs before. I've seen the relics that people have used, packed column, high flow rate, which translates to less sensitivity, a lot of valve timing issues that I've seen before, where you either have one or multiple valves and you're trying to time it. I like this because it's a lot simpler and you're using modern capillary columns. Are there benefits then for throughput or for uptime, which is always a big thing in these labs?
Sure. So as you mentioned, we're able to simplify it. We're no longer doing a lot of gymnastics with the valve, sending different components to different columns, different detectors. We're really able to simplify it that way. Kind of the biggest benefit to this is our ability to run a faster analysis. So I'm actually going to scroll down here just to show you the chromatography. What you'll see is we are able to complete this just over 15 minutes, and we're able to get all of the species that you're looking for. And so that's out to C4 that we're able to complete this in about 15 minutes. So you can see we have all the wonderful peak aspect ratio of a capillary column, no more large blobs or expansions due to, the methanizer or anything like that a lot of our traditional setups have. We're really able to tie this down and really get a lot of sensitivity and a lot of throughput. And the key thing about throughput with this, we were discussing how many transformers they have. You've been through these labs, just how many samples, what their sample load really looks like. It's tremendous. And so if you have a way of sampling every 15 minutes versus, some of the older methods, which were like 30, 40 minutes, something like that, that's just gain time. And the nice part about this being auto sampler is now you can just load up, the Headspace auto sampler. In our case, I believe it holds 90 samples. So, you can really load this thing up, let it go overnight and just kind of walk away and be confident that you're getting good results.
That's awesome. Yeah, I look at this data and this is a kick-ass chromatogram, by the way.
Thank you.
The peak symmetry is gorgeous and the separation is perfect. So I see that and I get excited, but then I also see, kind of the TCD shows carbon monoxide at the end, and you look at the sensitivity gain you get when you do the carbon monoxide through the methanizer FID on the figure 2 there. It's pretty big. So that's pretty awesome as well.
So I will also say with this, something I forgot to mention before is this is actually using argon carrier gas. So no more reliance on helium. We do have, again, your normal hydrogen air, but hydrogen air, argon, that's all you need. Anything that you might need is readily available as well.
So argon works fine with the mole sieve. You're not getting like stuck in the mole. Argon's kind of the perfect size to fit in a LTA zeolite. But okay, that's pretty awesome.
Yep, it gives us selectivity for oxygen as well.
Yeah, because a lot of labs are not able to get helium anymore.
It's tough.
Very, very nice. So in terms of performance, then how does this thing compare with state of the art out there, and what are you getting in terms of limits of detection and reproducibility?
So I actually have a table for that as well. So you'll see that for our anything on the FID, we are reaching low ppm levels of detection, which is excellent, well within the method that we're looking for. And you can see even for like oxygen nitrogen on an argon TCD, we're still able to get pretty close to 50, 100 ppm. But hydrogen, that's infinitely more important to a lot of these customers. We're able to get down to just below 10 ppm for that. So we're getting high sensitivity and excellent repeatability.
Yeah, your RFDs are well below 2% for the FID. That's great. For a headspace method too, that's really good.
Thank you. The other thing I did want to mention, so we're talking about these new oils and the various oil types. One of the things that we want to keep in mind is future-proofing this system. And so with regards to that, these new fame-based oils are becoming much more important to kind of the industry. One, they're renewable. They're a lot more environmentally friendly. If something catastrophic does happen, microbes can break down fames, but they can't necessarily break down mineral oil or silicone as some of the other oil types are. And for that, we start to see some new byproducts emerging, one of which, and probably the biggest one, would be methanol. And so what we see is we've actually tested this for methanol. Methanol drops right in between basically C3s and C4. And if this needs to be extended out, it can be with the column set that's been chosen. It really is kind of a future-proofed method.
I wonder if that's dimethyl ether coming out at 20 minutes, that can react pretty quick.
It's an excellent point.
Yeah, so these are those sustainable oils, renewable oils. I've seen those, and I've heard, we've been on some ASTM committees where there's methanizer failures because of these, I think they call them FR3s or fame-based oils. And I've literally been to labs where you pull a drawer open and it's full of old nickel catalyst methanizers that have died. Some of them die within a day of running these oils. Have you seen then that you get kind of robustness to these fame oils? And so that's what this methanol spike is looking at?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm actually going to scroll back up to the design and kind of highlight that. You guys have seen me now a couple of times. You know my feeling on the Jetanizer. It's an awesome product. And that's really what has kind of enabled this design. So again, a lot of our competition, a lot of what we've seen, they have to throw in an additional valve to avoid oxygen and various other components from hitting the methanizer. And that's just not something that we've had to worry about since we've switched over to the Jetanizer. So even as we start to expand out to heavier components and fame, basically components for that as impurities, we've had absolutely no issues so far with what we've been doing. It's definitely been very, very nice. So,
well, we love to hear that. We try to make a good product, but of course you never know until it's being used in the field. So that's always great feedback. And I love that you minimize the valving, because honestly, I think valving problems are the single worst issue to deal with in the GC world, because especially when you get out into the field and trying to diagnose the timing and things like that. So that's fantastic that you've been able to remove that.
Yep, we're down to a single valve time. So even if you have to replace your columns, you should be back up and running in probably less than couple hours. So
that's awesome. And that there's a restrictor in there too to simulate the column 2 restriction.
Yep. So that's actually a needle valve. So you can dial in the pressure when you need to balance it.
Well, I love this. I've been around Toga for a few years now, and this is definitely a needed addition and kind of future addition, not using pack columns, using a much simpler setup. I think this is going to be very welcomed by the industry. So congrats on that. Looking forward to seeing it. Anything else I missed in terms of what else is awesome about this? I think we hit a lot of the great things, and it was great that you could show us some of the data. Anything else?
I'd say the main thing is if you are interested in this, definitely reach out to your local salesperson, or you can reach out to us, and we're happy to answer any additional questions you might have.
Awesome. And I think the argon thing can't be understated either. I didn't even catch that in reading the application note, but that's a big deal. Well, with that, I think I'll close. Ian, thank you so much for your time. Again, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you, Ian. With that, I want to thank the viewers for listening. If you like what you saw, please like us and click to subscribe. Let's change the world.